Yo, yo, yo! Sorry, that's a bit too exciting for this subject. Let me start again. Hello everybody, my name is Tom. This is going to be a TED Talk about painting and prepping in a non-ideal situation, which is at home. Right, so let's talk about paint. So I have been asked by a few about painting. I don't know why you lot keep asking me, like I know what I'm doing. I don't. But I know people who do, and I'm going to recycle their information. It's going to go in here and out there, and it's going to make me look good until it goes wrong, okay? If it goes wrong, it's your fault and not mine. So I've got 7... Well, let me check out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 chapters to this storybook, and we're going to work through them. It's going to be a long video. It's going to be a boring video. I'm going to do you a favour and put timestamps in the description so you can skip to different chapters. Remind yourself what I'm saying. Obviously, I've got all of you in front of me to ask these questions. That's a joke. I haven't got anybody here to ask me questions. So I'm going to try my best to pull up common issues. If you have any questions, timestamp it in the description. Send me a message on like Instagram. I'll put my Instagram in the description and ask me about it. And I'll try my best to like talk you through it. But it's pretty self-explanatory, most of it. Paintwork is obviously, you know, if you're talented at paintwork, it's not going to be too hard. But I would say paintwork is more confidence than it is raw skill. It's confidence and also it's confidence and patience. If you don't have either, don't do it. If you're not really someone to work on the tools, you're going to struggle. But you don't know till you try, do you? So I think our first chapter is equipment and PPE. Okay, so I think the first thing which I would say is important is being comfortable doing the work. Okay, now prep work ain't fun. You know, it's tedious and it has to be done right. It has to be done by the books. So definitely, I would say a radio in a clean environment is probably the best things you can do to try, not enjoying yourself, but making it tolerable, okay? Now, obviously you've got to make the best out of a bad situation, which it is. It's a bad situation, you're not going to have fun. But try your best to have fun in a not very fun situation, because that's what it is. It's pretty boring, it's pretty shit. But it's alright, because, you know, it's not like you've got anything better to be doing. If you've got an old car and you're painting at home, you ain't got no friends to see, so stop whinging. So let's talk about equipment and PPE, right? First I'm going to get off of this is probably the bit of safety equipment that you could do without, but you need, and I'll explain it, is a full suit. Now I'm not talking like a set of overalls, or your trackies, so you can go down at, you know, the fish and chip shop on Friday night. I'm not talking about one of them like jumpsuits or nothing. It's Christ, they're cover overalls, but they're white. You know, you'll see a lot of clean-up teams in radioactive places, or, you know, disaster areas wearing them. I think they're called like Tyvex or something. Again, I'll link everything in the description so you can see. But basically, they're clean and they're used. So you don't get paint on you, but I think a lot of it is so things don't come off you onto the paint. So obviously if you're wearing a tatty old jumper, it's got oil on it, every time you walk around the car when you're painting, your silicone and wax and grease is going to, like, the particles will blow off your clothes into it, fibres will come off and get stuck in the paint, and like, it's not very fun, especially when you mix some paint up and it gets on you. So it does, you know, it's protective overalls. It does what it says, but it protects you from the car and the car from you. So it works both ways. I don't think they're very cheap. I'm pretty sure like one set is as much as a normal set of overalls, but you can like use it throughout the car. No, actually you can't. I wouldn't do the dust work, like blocking a car down in primer and filler with them. Blocking filler down with them just so they don't get dusty. It's worth to have two sets, one for priming and prepping, and another for painting. So that's the suits. Moving on, the second most important, they're all important, the second most important, gloves. If you're watching this video a month from when it was put out, COVID-19's about, it's going to be hard to find gloves, so order them before you do anything because they'll take a while to come through. If you've never ordered a set of gloves, I'm not talking about like the leather ones you'd be wearing, I'm not talking about, you know, the rock climbing gloves, I'm talking about, you know, protective rubber gloves, not the big bastards neither, like the latex ones. If you've never had the experience of having a latex glove on when you've got latex allergies, it's not very nice. So before you order, I would totally avoid the latex gloves. Go straight to the nitrate and make sure they're dust free. You don't want no contaminants on the car, and if you're wearing, well, you know, gloves that have got dust inside them, it's not great. I'm pretty sure the dust free ones are there, so when you sweat, when your hands get a bit gammy, it won't like you know, burn and your skin. You don't want to sweat all over your hands, pressed up against plastic rubbing, because your hands will get sore. Pretty sure that's what the dust is for. Another thing with gloves, they come in boxes of 100, so there's no, you know, you ain't going to run out. But something I do, not that it's right or wrong, is I double glove them, right? So you put a set of gloves on, you put another set of gloves on. Now the worst thing is when you got clean gloves on, you're ready to do a job and you get dirty. So if you're mixing paint, you get paint on them, you can't grab your gun's going to get dirty. And yes, you can clean your gun off, but it's still not very fun having to do it. So double gloves. So I mix the paint out of one set of gloves, put it in the gun, connect all the airline up, and as soon as I'm ready, glove comes off and I've got another glove underneath. If you use single glove, not only if you rip the outer one will your hands be exposed, but also if you take it off, it's a bastard to get another one on if your hands are sweaty. So double glove if you're minted, double glove. If you're in poor, single glove. And probably the most important thing we're going to move to now is masks, right? So breathing apparatus. If you have a compressor man enough to support it, an air-fed mask when you're painting a car, it's quality, pays for itself, you know. That's what we use at work. I mean, I don't use it. That's what the boys use at work. Well, it's self-explanatory. You get clean air through, not in a full mask. It's better visibility, better everything. But because you're painting at home, chances are you don't have kind of the compressor that is on three-phase circuit supply. So we're going to talk about half masks. And I don't mean them shitty little dust ones. Bin that, you don't need that. Like you're going to kill yourself, and if you wear one, you're an idiot. We're talking proper rubber canister-fed ones, like go over your nose and down, right? There's different ones you can get. All of them, make sure they're rated for paint vapors, because we're going to be painting 2-pack in them, and 2-pack isn't, well, 2-pack's dead, but I mean the paint itself, in 2K paint is pretty deadly if you breathe it in. You want the ones rated for paint vapor. You can get the canisters that come off, but the one I'll be using as a fixed one, this is a disposable one. You use it for a couple of paint jobs, you chuck it in the skip kind of job. If you're at home, I would get the canister ones, because you can have a mask for life. Keep changing the canisters out. You know, you'd use it on the odd occasion, but you don't want to use a mask and sit it in a bag for a year and not use it again because you don't know what, you know, mould and stuff like that. So I'll link it in the description again. Make sure the mask you get is appropriate for what you're doing. What you're doing will affect your lungs. I'm feeling a bit wheezy just thinking about it, but so that's your mask for you. Again, I'll link it. Let's talk dust extraction now. Not vapor extraction, we'll talk about it a bit later. Dust extractions for blocking filler and also blocking the high build. A Henry Hoover will do. Problem with Henrys over dust extraction units is that the filters block up in them and the Hoover overheats. I have a Henry, and every hour of using it I've got to go outside to the bin, put a bin bag over the bin, put your hands in it and brush out the kind of the filter between the motor and the bucket itself, because it clogs up. and your hoover overheat and eventually break if it gets too hot. I would look on Facebook, eBay, and places for second-hand dust extraction units. They come up pretty cheap, but I haven't used it. There's one on eBay, it's brand new, dust extraction unit for 30 quid. Can't argue that price, even if it does break. If you've got the car done and it breaks, it doesn't matter because it served its purpose in the bin. It's not the best way to think about it, but that's dust extraction. Now we're going to talk about the tools that need dust extraction, right? Now, orbital sanders, if you're taking paint back, like sanding the paint off a car back to bare metal like I did with this, mate, it is a lifesaver having an orbital sander. Again, I wouldn't get an air one. Like, it's alright for people with like three-phase compressors, that have unlimited supply of air. But if you're using like a single-phase 3-pin plug, 13 amp job, 200 litre kind of size, go for an electric sander because you're going to be holding it down constantly for long periods of time. I've got a McAllister one from B&Q, and I haven't got great reviews, but I've got 2 of them, and I've used mine like pretty heavily, extensively used is what mine are. I've stripped my car back 3 times with them, so I've never had an issue. The head's a bit small, but you're only on a Mini, you're sanding a small car. On a bigger car, you can get Merco electric ones, but they're like 360 quid. That's a lot of money for something you're going to use once or twice. If you're going to use it more, obviously it's worth the investment because they're smaller, more mobile as well. We'll talk about going back to being comfort. Make sure your tools aren't like big hunky things you chucking around. Make sure they're small. Make sure hoses, like dust extraction hoses, like small and thin. I've been like messing about with their Henry Hoover hose, and it's so like cumbersome. You're trying to block a car down, it's easier taking it off and like manually going over the block and around it, hoovering it up instead of putting it on the block. So if I was doing anything different, I'll get that. And I'm still very even though I'm done, I'm still tempted to get the hose just in case I need it in the future. But blocks as well, blocking paint down, right? Okay. Now you might think a wooden block's sufficient. Not only are you wrong, you're also a cowboy. A bit of a dodgy bastard. Wooden block is not okay. Don't ever think it is. I don't need reason behind it. There's a reason like blocks are specially made. You can do it with a wooden block. Doesn't make it right. Same with the rubber blocks you can get from places like B&Q and Alfred's. I use a rubber block for wet dry. It's like a curve and it's a flat, and you pull the ends up, tuck your sandpaper in, it like tucks in some nails, you close it back up again. They're brilliant for wet and dry, and I wouldn't use anything else. But for blocking filler and primer back, I use a marker block. They do a lot of body shop equipment, so their names are going to come a lot. I use a marker block, and it's got a special type of sandpaper with it. It's called Abranet, and it's like a mesh. So you hook your hoover up. It's got a hoover takeoff, which is the main thing. You hook your hoover up to it, and it will suck the filler through. It'll suck the filler and primer through it. So your sandpaper doesn't like mat and block up, so it doesn't dull easier, and it's just a lot cleaner. So, and again, I'll link it in the description. But the quality thing about America blocks is they got a thin surface area, and then the palm thing's above it. So you've got your block here, and then the palm thing's up here. So you've got a lot of visibility, and you might think, oh, visibility, I don't need that, but you do. If you're just like, if you've only got like a little bit to like rub back, you can just go in circular motions, and you can see it easier. And obviously, if you can, I don't need to tell you about being able to see what you're doing. It's obviously going to make a better job. But America blocks definitely worth the investment. I'd say an orbital sander, not necessary, but it is easy. America block, necessary for doing a good job. I mean, you can argue with me all you want. I don't want to spend 24 quid. It's like 24 quid for the block and hose. If you don't buy it, you're cheap and you don't deserve to do your car properly, and I'm glad your car's going to turn out bad. Sandpapers, right? Sandpapers for the orbital sanders. Obviously, in an ideal world, we'll all have Merca sanders because the discs are cheap but bigger. My sanders are 125mm head. Now you can buy the 125mm discs in B&Q and Halfords. I'll buy them off eBay, they're cheaper. But in the end, I just bought the Merca discs, which are 198, a lot bigger. You know, they go over the edges about 25mm more. But you know, you can cut them back if you want. I just ordered them because I was ordering in bulk, and I don't know, there's something about it. The sandpaper is to better quality. I don't know if that's that thing because all sandpaper is the same, but they usually last a lot longer than the actual ones you get, especially for the Orbi sanders, because the Orbi sander ones, they're like made out of felt, and the sandpaper itself peels off really easily. No. Orbital sanders, Merca discs, that's what you want. You want the ones with loads of holes in, so you can get proper dust extraction through them, because your Orbi sand will hook up to dust extractor, same as a block. Again, I'll link all the discs I was using for my car in the description, and it's up to you if you go for something different. Blocks and sandpaper. If you get the Merca block, which you will be doing, you have to get the Merca sandpaper. It's called Abranet. For a box of 50 strips, it's 24 quid. I blocked my complete car and all the panels down in about 20 strips. That's like in it. So I got 30 left over, 320 grit Abranets. If you're doing filler, depending how ropey your car is you know, will dictate how many you go through. But you know, I did my friend Will's car. I say I did it, all I did was a corner of his roof. And I went through 3 bits of 80 grit, 2 bits of 120. I went for a second hand bit of 180 strip, and then one 320, and then went to 500 Gold Flex. That was it. And it was like from like here, the whole corner around it was hanging. So you don't go through a lot. So I know it's like 24 quid, you don't want to spend it, but I mean 100 quid on sandpaper ain't awful. If that's like, what's that, 2 hours labour without consumables at a body shop. So you might think it's expensive, but it's not. So the only thing I would use, which isn't specialist, is a wet dry. You know, you can buy the normal sheets of that to do your finished product on your paint, and also the primer, wet dry the primer. I haven't. Don't take me as an example, but if you're getting a concourse job, wet dry that primer. And also, let's talk about something called Gold Flex right now. Gold Flex 500. I'll say it a lot in this video. If I'm talking about blocks, I'm talking about Abranet. If I'm talking about Orbi sanders and discs, I'm talking about the Merca discs. If I say Gold Flex, it's just is a product name, so I'll say Gold Flex 500. It's 500 grit on a sponged back, so, and you use your palm to sand it. So, because obviously 500 is a finishing grit, not a block. You know, it's not a shaping grit. It's just to take scratches out. You'll most likely be doing corners and all that, and your hand molds to a corner a lot better than a flat block does naturally. So Gold Flex is a sponge back, so it kind of creases around shapes. You can also get, it's not cold Gold Flex, but it's the same type of deal. It's wet dry, but it's got a sponged back to it, which is also brilliant. If you're wet dry in a corner like this, don't touch it with a block. If you're doing like a flat panel, definitely, but use a palm job, go around like the corners and stuff. I think that's it for sandpaper. So you've got your strips, you've got your discs, and then you've got a foam back Gold Flex. And also sandpapers, right? Let's talk about this real quick. I'll talk about it again, but if we cover it now, you'll know if you're trying to make an order list. Filler work, block it in with an 80, take the roughness out with 120, skip the 180 because that's a waste of money, straight to 130 to block the scratches out, and then 500 to take them scratches out of the 320. So that's what you're going to need. If we're talking wet dry, start at 1,000, then 1,500, and then 2,000. So my camera shut off, my bad. We were in the middle of talking about wet dries. well, I was just saying, I think 2000 is the highest you're ever going to need before you start going into polish. Obviously, don't polish your prime when you're wet drying that. Tape, right? Tape, big. Make sure you get it right. Make sure it's 3M or another creditable brand. Masking tape we're talking about. If you use gaffer tape, you're dodgy. If you use boxing tape, you're an idiot. If you use sellotape, you're also an idiot. Masking tape's what you want. I use masking tape for everything, even when I should be using something else. But I use 3M. It's called Scotch tape. It's blue. There's different sizes you can get. There's like 15mm. There's fine line. There's like 19, 22, 35, all sorts. If we talk about inches, I would say 1 inch tape is more useful than 2, because if you need 2, just like rip 2 bits of 1 inch tape, stick them together like side by side like that, so it's wider. 2 inch tape is definitely handy for doing like sticking on the inside of a lip and then putting masking paper on, but you can still do it 1 inch. I would order more 1 inch and 2 inch. Again, I'll link it. I've never got on with that white masking tape. You can buy at B&Q. And another thing with tape, right, if it's cold, every time you peel it off, it's going to rip and strip, so you'll be unrolling your tape, peeling it out, and then all of a sudden it'll start ripping inwards, and then it just kind of ruins that bit of tape you just had. So I leave all my tape inside an airing cupboard overnight if I'm ever doing anything, so when I get back to the car, it's like, it sticks better, it doesn't rip, it's just better. So that's masking tape. Masking itself, brown. That's brown card. You can get a roll of that brown card for like 15 quid. I'll link it because I don't know the actual measurements, but you can get rolls of brown card. I'd use that, and also sheet. So you see that stuff. That's called booth sheeting, right? So for like paint booth masking, it's called, and 15 quid for a roll, and my family lined the entire living room with it for like Halloween. I've lined this garage twice. I've put multiple sheets over your car. It's like an unlimited amount. 15 quid. And it folds out, so you get a roll that big, and then it folds out like the whole roof. That's one sheet, and it goes under that panel there, so it's like a 2-bay garage in one strip. So that kind of set, in fact, it doesn't sell itself. I don't know what will, and you'll have to buy some for sheeting up your booth, but we'll talk about that. And that's masking. Talking about masking, don't use newspaper because the ink runs off when you paint, because obviously you put thinners in your paint. As soon as it goes onto it, it's too thin, it kind of runs off, and also obviously paint's wet. If you get a newspaper wet, it just claps in itself, so avoid that. And the last one on equipment and PPE is rags. Let's talk rags, do's and don'ts. Don't use dirty ones, don't use used ones, don't use ones that's gone through a washing machine. Really, in an ideal world, you want to be using rags in a box, that are like sterile. Not sterile, not like, obviously you're going to get germs in them if they're sat there, but like no fibres on them. You can use like plenty rolls, home bargain, stuff like that. Don't use tissue paper, because when it gets wet, it's like rolls up into little beads and it's all over your car. Don't use what are some ones they use for cleaning cars? Don't use microfibers. Just because they do leave, they might be microfiber, they do leave fibers, to be honest, not great. Don't use like ripped up jumpers where the edges are fraying out, because if you get any like bits of fray string on your car and it doesn't blow off right, it'll be in your paintwork. I always stick to using proper Body Shop rated ones. I use cotton cloth. When I'm doing primer and wiping it down, I use cotton cloths to wipe it over with solvent degreaser, and tack rags they're called, and they are exactly what they say they are. They're rags and they're tacky. So you wipe it over, and it like takes all like the fibres and dust and stuff off. We'll talk about prepping the car later on, but there's your rags. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about that. It's just common sense. Don't use anything that's dirty and flaking shit everywhere, because it's going to get in the paint work. Make sure it's clean as well. Like, you do 2 pair, wipe your car down with 1 dusty one, bin it. Don't even bother reusing it unless you're going to reuse it in a workshop environment. So if you use it on bodywork, never use it on bodywork again. That goes straight to the workshop to use as an oil rag or in the bin. You know, if it's dusty, don't reuse it. Wipe over it once. Get a new rag, wipe over it again, get a new rag until your rags are clean, and then you can use the rags for different activities like dipping oil and stuff. So I think that's it for equipment and PPE, or like handheld equipment. Obviously paint, guns and that, but we'll talk about it in a different segment. So let's move on to chemicals, chapter 2. It's going to be a short one. Chemicals. First, let's talk about safety. You'll burn your throat if you breathe without a mask on. Make sure you're wearing your mask. Make sure you're wearing your gloves, and make sure you're not wearing like short sleeves. You're making it like a full length sleeve jumper. Preferably wear your white overalls we were talking about earlier. So wear all the safety equipment. Thinners aren't very nice. It's a skin irritant. It'll burn your lungs. It's not very healthy. It's toxic. It's not very healthy for you. Don't burn it. It's flammable. Don't be an idiot. It's a dangerous substance. You don't want to get it on your paint. You'll eat through it. And the only time you'll ever really use thinners, I could tell, you can just tell this is going to be an interesting subject. The only time you should really be using thinners is to water paint down so it goes through the gun easier, and cleaning guns out as well. When you're cleaning a gun out, don't use them. Thinners will eat through your gloves. When you clean your gun out and you physically got a hands-on gun, thinners all over your hands, make sure you're wearing any big rubber red ones. I'll insert a photo. When you mix and paint, you can use the little nitrate ones we talked about. That's thinners. Degreasers are something different. Degreasers we use to wipe the panels down. It's clues in the name. Takes grease off things. Now, you can get a solvent, you can also get water-based degreasers, right? Now, the water-based degreasers you mix with water, which is alright for like, let's say we're prepping a panel, a used panel, and it's got mud on it. So like we're going along the bottom of the car, and it's got mud on it. And we're using degreaser, water-based, to clean it off. Now that's going to be best, because water is better than chemical to take dirt off, because it's water-based. That's the only time I can ever see it coming in handy, really. And also it might be cheaper because you mix it with water. I'd stay away from it. I'd stick to degreasers, actual degreasers. Your panels shouldn't be dirty coming into the paint booth. Power wash them off. If they're dirty, you've got to use water-based. You're not doing the prep work right. Obviously, before it comes in the booth, before a car comes in the booth, it needs to be clean. So give it a full detail. Stay away from wax. So that's your solvent degreasers. I use the fast dryer one so I can wipe it on the car. Don't have to wipe it off. Dries into the atmosphere. It's fine. You can get slow drying ones, which is quite handy if you have like an open pot and you're going around dabbing a rag in to wipe the car down. That's quite handy. I bought 5 litres of 15 quid on eBay and it came delivered next day, so there's no excuse not to have it. If you don't use brake cleaner. Every time you try to use brake cleaner, even though it's a degreaser, it's never really worked out. I've always got stuff in the paint afterwards. It might just be me, but I stay away from it. And panel wipe, very similar to solvent degreaser. I'd even go as far as saying they're exactly the same thing. We don't use panel wipe at work. We just use a solvent degreaser. I think panel wipe is almost the same chemical, but it probably sells for more money because it tells you what it is on the packet. Maybe. So that's, panel wipe, separate chemical. And that's it for chemicals. Don't go huffing it in. We'll get some brain damage. I mean, a lot of you watching already have brain damage or just naturally retarded. But just use your brain. Don't drink it. That's another thing. Don't use white spirits neither. That's not. I mean, there's nothing to say you can't, but no one does, so don't. This is what the Body Shop use, so I'll go through that. And that's chapter 2. That's our chemicals out of the way. Chapter 3, paints. It's going to be a long one, I think. Let's start off with primers. Now we have different kind of primers, right? Okay, so you have your etch primer. Your etch primer goes on bare metal only. Okay, if you put if you've got a new panel in the car and it's a photo etch, so it's got like I think it's called photo etch, like the black on it because it's new. If you sand a few bits back to weld up and you etch primer over it, it's gonna make the photo etch layer really soft. So when you, obviously I love the sound of my own voice here. It'll make the photo etch go soft, so when you paint over that, you'll get cracks through your paint. I can tell you from personal experience that, because I did my skull and I ground a few bits back to bare metal, prepped all the photo etch back, and then just hit it all with etch primer, and I'd sand it all back to bare metal because the paint underneath it, I'd grab my fingernail, ran it down the panel, and all the paint came off apart from the photo etch. So don't use etch primer over that. There's different kind of etch primers. You can get ones from Halford. I don't know if I'm not going to say I know the names of them, but you can get ones from Halford to come out grey. They're like a 2-in-1 primer, like etch and normal primer. For this car, the etch primer I use is 25 quid a tin. 25 quid a tin. It's called a wash primer, and you dust it on real quick. Done. Like there's hardly any colour to it. It's got a yellow tint to it. It's hard to see. I'll show you later. And it's got a yellow tinge to it. It's called wash primer etch. You can get the acid etch ones that are obviously better for adhering to bare metal because it bites into the bare metal. Etch primer is expensive. Etch primer is expensive, but it's definitely worth it, especially if you're like doing the welding jobs in your car and you're not going to get around to painting it for a couple of months. You need to etch it. Unless you're etch primer, you got wash and you got acid etch. You use all sorts of etch, but I personally use the wash ones. That's what I've been recommended to use. I will link only the wash ones. Anything else you see, use at your own discretion. Just make sure you don't spray over other paints or it has a chemical reaction. That's your etch primers. Let's talk about weld-through primers. Weld-through primers, vein of my life. They're the only sort of primer you can't weld through. I used a zinc-based one. Obviously, if you're welding a zinc, you get a weld poisoning, you get zinc poisoning. It's not very good for your lungs. For some reason, they make etch primer. For some reason, they make primer with it. Use your mask when you're welding it. It doesn't really weld very well, but it's good because it doesn't burn. So you use it between those two seals. You spray it in straight through the middle, put your seals together, you drill a hole in the top one, and you scuff the bottom one up, and you plug weld onto that, and then what it is, it's so when you weld around it, it doesn't melt off, okay? That's all that is. You can get different base ones, you can get zinc ones, you can get copper ones. I'm not sure what the best is. I've only ever used zinc. I haven't been impressed, but they do serve a purpose. So if you're spot welding two seams together or plug welding, make sure you have some. You know. So that's that. What other? You got filler. You got your grey primer. You got red oxide. It's just a sealing primer. You've got your grey primer, which goes over a panel to get it all one colour. So when you paint said panel, if the paint doesn't show up the lighter bits of paint and the dark. That's what the grey is all about. This yellow is all filler primer. Comes out thicker so you can block it down. That's all that's about. Filler primer is good. We'll talk about it when we're talking about prepping the car. But on this, high build primer is what you need, and you need to put it through a gun really. 2K high build is what you want. That's your last kind of coat before you block it down. I'll talk about blocking again one day. But 2K high build. I'm so sorry, guys. Trust me, this is an interesting subject. Okay. So here's how a primer goes: bare metal, etch, 2K high build, then it's ready for prep. If you have a panel, it is photo etch, then you use Scotch-Brite and degreaser, and then you hit it with normal, like a 2K high build, and then it's ready for paint. It's ready for blocking the paint. Don't use the etch primer, like go heavy with it. You only need a dusting. Go heavy with the high build. Because that's what you're going to be blocking the shape into. Cool. Moving on. So that's your primers. 2K or cellulose. Now cellulose paint, I am determined to not be proved wrong. I am sure it was outlawed a while ago because it wasn't very good. All cellulose is one stage paint. So you put it in your gun, you paint the car, it goes dry. Whereas 2K is paint and hardener, you mix them together, it's ready to go in the car. 2K is superior in every single way. The only way you're going to mess 2K up is if you mix it wrong, okay? And you can still buy cellulose. I thought it was outlawed, apparently not. Now I was talking to the paint rep and he didn't give me a great description. All he said is it's not like old cellulose and it's more used for industrial applications, just like Hammerite is. You know, Hammerite's at one stage, cellulose is one stage, but cellulose you put through a gun. That's what he said, and that's coming from a man who sells it. Sells cellulose and 2K, by the way, so he's not biased. Cellulose isn't what it used to be. I know all the old sweats and the old timers will be like, oh, back in my day we used cellulose. Yeah, well, back in the day they did a lot of things. Doesn't mean it's right. So stay 2K. That's why. So it's more like that story. 2K safety, got it written down. Obviously looking out for you. Masks, 2K is horrible. It's bad for your lungs. It will kill you. Wear a mask. Also, just because a mask is rated to be used in a room just because it's rated for 2K and paint vapor does not mean you should stand prolonged amount of time in a room full of 2K vapor. It will get to you. You'll get inside your masks. It'll go behind your eyeballs, and you'll be breathing it in for your eyes. It's just... Anyway, I said here we should talk about hardeners, right? Hardeners is the other, what do you want to call it? Well, anyway, it's the other side of 2K paint. So you've got your paint, you've got your hardener. That's all that is. Different types of hardener, right? So you've got different times. There's some hardeners 5 minutes, some's 20, some's 25, 30 an hour. It has different time ratings to it. You've got air dry, you've got bake dry, you've got extra fast, which is like I would stay away from, because one thing you need when you're painting a car is time. I'd put one paint coat on. I'd finish the paint coat and then I'd leave it overnight, so you don't really need super fast hardener. And you also get activators as well, like there's rocket fuel activator as well, which I've used. Just what I've always found that all the rocket hardener does is makes it not very enjoyable to work with. So I'll stay away from that. Just stick to your air dry. If you're looking for a time, like 20, like if you're looking at the time on, I would just get a fast air dry. That's what they call it, just fast air dry hardener. And I think that's like a 20-minute hardener, which is plenty of time to go around the car and get a coat on. So that's your hardeners. They're also called activators. So if you buy some paint and it says, oh, you get all of this paint plus an activator, the activator's a hardener. When you're mixing paint, right, so let's say our paints are 2-to-1, which most paints are these days. That's two part paint, 1 part hardener, and usually 10% thinners. I'll probably do a little video on it. Let me get the cup real quick. Do you mind? I'm sorry. My camera turned off, but I'm back. Don't worry. I hope it didn't turn off halfway through speaking. Could you imagine? I can only find dirty ones. This is not a true representation of who I am. See on the side here. Well, let's start on the side that we don't want to talk about. Let's say 4:1. I don't know. Hopefully it focuses. Thank God it's dirty. You wouldn't be able to see that. You see, there's all these fancy lines. Is that 2:1? That's 3:1. That's 2:1. And obviously you've got your measuring scales up the siding and all that. That's more for like big batches of paint. So like 600ml of that, 200ml this. 2:1. So if you see, the lower one is where you fill your paint to. So you fill your paint up there, hardeners on top. So let's talk about a big one because there's quite a big gap. I fill my paint all the way up to here. Okay, that's my 2. The 2 is always a paint. And then 1 part hardener. And I'll stop there, get the hardeners out, put hardener in it, and that'll bring it up to 1. So if there's 2, there's 1. So that's my 2:1 mix. And then if you have a look, hopefully it focuses in. But if you, I'm trying to look at the screen and look at the pot. There's like these small percentages there where you fill your thinners up to. Also, there's standard thinners which are for cellulose. There's 2K thinners. Make sure you get 2K thinners. And you fill up percentages up. I always go to 10. I haven't ever been told why, but I do. And it works. But you thin paint out, so it goes through your gun a bit easier. Obviously, if you just mix paint and hardener straight together, you go through a gun, especially a finishing gun, like your colour gun. It's all to do with needle sizes and jets and all that kind of fancy stuff. I don't understand it. I adapt to the gun because I don't know what I'm doing. It goes through the gun. If you have a real fine needle, you'd want more thinners, so it waters the paint down. Don't get excited with thinners. I usually pour it into the cap and then pour it in, because if you go too much, the paint will go on the panel and run straight off. If you've got loads of runs in your paint, it might not be you as a bad painter, but it probably is talking to you lot. It could just be too much thinners. But we will elaborate on that when we come to the painting itself chapter. Mixing paint, we just talked about that. Reactions and temperature. Right, now I'm not going to sit here and I can't tell you all these fancy terms, but I'm sure I'll include a graph link below. But let's talk about temperatures, and the reason that I'm sat here talking to the camera instead of painting my car. Temperature, right? Now, first of all, if it's too cold, your paint will run. Okay, it doesn't set hard, it doesn't set fast enough, so you can't, if it's dry, I'd just like that, one layer, fill the gun back up, straight to the top, you know, go down it twice, one after another. If it's cold, I'll bam, 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 you know, it sounds just like that, the paint. When I go back up to the top to put another one on, the first layer ain't dry, so it'll just all run. That's why you want to avoid painting in the cold. You want to paint in the warm. The way I'd see it is, because I don't know any how warm the ideal temperature is. If you go outside and you can't stand out there for 10 minutes like shaking back with a t-shirt on, it's too cold. You can heat a garage up, but it's still kind of cold in it. You know what I mean? If it's sunny for another hour, I'll hit the roof with paint. So that's your temperature. Reactions, right? So one of the things that you lot are going to be battling against, especially those of you with dirty garages, silicone number one. If you have a garage, you use silicone in it, you're fucked. But it's just dirty garages, right? So silicone, wax, and grease, which is the reason why you wear the suit, is the reason why all of this is up. I mean, I shouldn't even be wearing this right now in the booth. I should have got my overs on, but I still need to degrease that. When you degreaser a car, you do take the wax and silicone off, but it's in the air. You know, it's like fine particles. So all the greasy stuff has to go, because every time a gust of wind comes in, it'll blow the silicone around. But we'll talk about it a bit later. Let's talk about silicone in the paintwork. What you'll see, as soon as you paint it, you'll have loads of little pits in it, like little dimples. you'll have loads of little dimples in the paint. That means you've got wax and silicone in it. When the paint dries, if you have any swirls, little swirls, that's also silicone in the paint. If you've got moisture in the paint, once the paint's gone hard, dried, over time it will sink. So you'll have loads of little pits again, but after an amount of time. There's so many things that can affect a good paint job that you kind of need to look out for. I can't really explain all of them, but my main issue is wax and grease in the paint job, and when I do the roof, I am really hoping it doesn't come up. If you do have wax in your paint job, right, don't sweat. I mean, do sweat, because it's not clean enough and it's more work, but it is savable. You just got to block that paint flat and then degrease it and make a better job of tidying the garage and try again. I've done my scuttle 3 times of primer now, and even now it's got like a little bit of silicone in, so that's what I'm worried about, but that's before I clean the garage up. So that's your temperature and reactions. Also, and I'll talk about it in a minute. Prepping. Chapter, what are we on now? 1, 2, 3. Chapter 4. Prepping panels. Right. Oh, we talked about this. We talked about this a minute ago. If you've forgotten, you're an imbecile. Because I forgot. Bare metal, prepping bare metal, right? When you sand a car back with 8 grit, get 8 grit, get most of the paint gone. But after you've got to bare metal, switch over to a 120 grit disc, go over the metal again, take the big scratches out. You know, you don't want to go too far back into the metal. I would take the top layer of paint off with an 80 and then hit over the 80 with a 120 until you get back to bare metal. In the corner you can't get to, make sure you don't leave any paints. Even if you have to sand it by hand, or a wire wheel on a drill, or an angle grinder on a wire wheel. One thing that is good is using roll lock sandpaper discs and also roll lock turtle discs. They've got those little rubber spikes on. To get it back to bare metal, and then from bare metal use etch primer. We've already talked about etch primer and reactions with other paints. So try your best. I'd mask over other paint really. Is that bad? I'd mask over the other paint. So yeah, bare metal, we've talked about that. Sandpaper on high build. So we're at the stage where we've done the 2K, right? So we've prepped the bare metal, we've painted it, we've blocked down the old paint, we've painted it. Let's say everyone's car's in 2K high build primer, which I hope we've talked about. I haven't glossed over that. Prepping on high build, right? High build primer is not filler. I don't think we've talked about filler yet. That's just a whole nother ball game. Don't go too harsh. Like, I know you can use 180. Wow, cool. You'll burn through it, and then you'll look like somebody who's used 2 courses of sandpaper. You won't look like a professional, which is what you are. I would start at 320. 320 sandpaper. That's enough for anybody. And that takes it down quick enough. Okay. Before I start, I should say guide coats. Actually, let's talk about it first before we go too far into it. A guide coat is a coat of guide. Right, there's different types of guide coat. Right, you can use matte black can, matte black rail can. You can use dry guide coat, which is a dust you apply with a sponge. I use stove paint. I use stove paint. Just went over it real quick. You know, it's not. As long as it's a big contrast in colour from the original colour, so grey, it's good. Because what it does is guide coat will sit in all the dips of the paint. So it will sit on the highs. Because let's say high build primer is like a wave. Yeah, right. And you've dusted a black on. Don't go too thick. Just dust it on. So you've hit all the high spots and you hit all the low spots of black paint. When you block it back with 320, you'll take the top layer off and you'll see the primer grey again. But you'll also see the black where it sat further down in the primer, if that makes sense. And what you want to do is you want to keep rubbing it back till all of it's gone. That's when you know there's no like low spots in that paint. There's no like bits that will come up kind of funny. Because that's what guide coat is. So I'll go over it with a 320 on a block. And once a car, I'll go everywhere with a 320. Sometimes you'll have to do bits by hand. I do all flat panels of a 320 grit, Abranet on a block, with a hoover attached to it. And any corners I would do by hand. I would just take the top layers off, just take the top layer of primer off, and then obviously I'd go back over the corners of 500 grit first. I do all the corners with 500 grit, but you want 320 the car, 500 the corners, and then 500 the whole car. You want to get all that primer, you want it smooth, you want it slick. And you want it so slick, I'd also go to 1000 wet dry on a sponge. It's what we talked about earlier, the sponge back 1000, go over it with water, all the primer, it'll feel lovely. As you can see, I've burnt through a little bit here. I was having some problem with my gun, it was like blocking up, I don't know why. But I've gone through on the corners, I've done what you shouldn't do. Don't panic. Don't panic about it, we can work with it. I just used filler primer in a can, and I went over all the edges that kind of looked like it was going back down to it, primer anywhere I went back to bare metal, and I just hit it with filler primer in a can, just a Halfords job. And I won't touch out of anything coarse over the 500 grit first, and I go around gently. And then that'll be fine, I shouldn't burn through then, because I've got more control over what I'm doing. And then that's your car prepped, for sandpaper wise. Okay, actually prepping the panel after that, first of all, you'd be using a block and a hoover attachment, so there won't be much dust. To make sure, clean the end of your hoover, clean the the plastic end of your Henry or whatever, and then go over the whole car with a hoover. So that's not the sound, with a hoover, to get all the dust up. And then if you have luxurious space, and like not living on the street, you can blow it off outside so there's no dust on it. And then the amount of times you want to degreaser it, I would say 3 times. Or at least that's what my boss told me. Degreaser, degreaser, degreaser again, and then once it's all done, you also want to degreaser that. So degreasing, and by degreaser I mean a solvent degreaser, which you talked about, fast dry or panel wipe it. But you just want it really clean for the first layer of paint to go on, okay? Don't underestimate how many times you need to clean it as well. And any nooks and crannies, make sure you hit with the compressed air, because if you're painting all of a sudden you hit like a composited dust and it blows over your fresh paintwork, it will look really good because you're doing a good job. It's not you're going to want to kill yourself. We're not going to go too far into filler, I don't think, but I should probably tell you about it. Filler work is a skill. You have to have a knack for it. It's surprising how much filler you're actually going to need when you get around to doing it. Like you might think you can get away with that if your dent's this big. You can get away with that much filler. You're wrong. By the end of it, once you've fillered it and glazed it, you'll have that much filler. Okay. Let's talk filler. My phone's going off. I use, and the company I work for use, a brand called U-Pole, which you've all heard of. It's called Dolphine. It's not the glaze is something else. With filler, it's going to sound funny, but it's all to do about consistency of the actual tub itself, if that makes sense. You don't want a really watery filler, or it won't go in very nice, you'll just keep dragging it out. You don't want a filler that's too thick, or it's going to, first of all, you're going to have like 4 arms like Popeye to spread it out. It's going to be harder to spread out, it's not going to go on as thin, it's not going to glide as well. But we found after using quite a few that the Dolphine goes on nice, consistency is always even. If you go for a pot and use another pot, it's always nice to use. It sands well, and it's blue, which is quite cool. I wouldn't use anything else now. Dolphine glaze, something else. Once you've done your filler work, you get air bubbles in it sometimes. So when you sand back your filler work with your 80 grit, or your 120, or your 320, you might come across some air pockets. That's fine, right? So what you do is you skim it in, get your shape, block your shape out. Don't worry about dips. Don't worry about air pockets. Just get it right, and then you mix up the glaze, which is almost like water. And you just use more than you need, because you can always sand it back out. Grab it, whack, slap her in there, whack it, or whack it flat, and then you block. I wouldn't block dull fine glaze down with anything less than 180 and 320. If you're down only 180, block it with 120, and then go over it with 320. Obviously, filler work, like I say, you can talk about forever. Trick is to not push too hard. Let's do an example. Let's say I've got the privilege of doing this. It's got a dent all through it. Okay, this panel here. So I'll mix up. When you mix it up, if you've got a dent that's shallow, if you've got a dent like that and it's shallow, it's not important. Shallow like that, and it's about wide, I would mix up probably twice the amount you'd think you need. You'd only think you'd need like a little spot that big. Don't go for more. It's better to have more than halfway through you realise you're doing it and not have enough and have to make an extra skim to compensate ignorance. Mix up more than you need. You know the golf ball to a pea. Fuck that. 1 golf ball, 2 peas. Okay. And what I do is I mix it up. Now, if you do it when you're comfortable, do some test runs with your filler spreader. It's easier. It's harder to go down because you'll be pushing your wrist in, but it's easier to drag up. So I clump it all at the bottom, and then do 1 drag up, and then another drag up, and another drag up until I got the basic shape. And I'll take the end of the filler spreader, knock down the edges, and then that's that skim done. The more you play with it, the worse it's going to get. Just get it in there. Doesn't matter how it looks, because at the end of the day, that's what the sandpaper's for, to get the shape. Don't be afraid to curve a filler spreader with your hands. Or if it's a plastic one, you can curve it. Just don't push down too hard, because all you end up doing is digging it back out, and that's not fun. And as soon as it starts drying, leave it. Doesn't matter what's there. If you've got massive clumps you don't need, whack them off quick. Put them on your pad, because if you keep filling it, all it's going to do when it dries is start pulling it back out, and you're going to get big air bubbles and that, and you're going to have to take it all back out. With filler work, I'm going off on a tangent here now. With filler work, make sure you've got a nice pot of filler. Make sure you've got glaze. Make sure you've got enough hardener. Make sure you've got clean filler spreaders and an onion board. If you're just using cardboard to mix it up, you're shooting yourself in the foot before you even start. Okay, that's filler work. I'm sure I'll do another video if you guys care, but you shouldn't really, because if you have to use filler, you should replace the panel or got the dent out with a set of panel hammers. But sometimes if you've done a patch, it's so much easier just whacking some filler in there, and it's not dodgy. If you do it right, it's not dodgy. For people who like reconstruct rear ends of it, that's dodgy. But if the metal work underneath is fine, it's fine using it. Okay, cool. Right, prepping back to here. We've covered degreasing and we've covered blocking, so that's all you need. Blocking is when you want to use your sanding block. I think we're all happy with that. If you have any questions. Do we have any questions? Max? Oh yeah, I don't care. Moving on. Painting equipment. I've jotted down guns, airlines, compressors, water traps, airlines and pressure. Cool. We'll start at paint guns. Now, the more money you spend, the better quality gun you're going to get. The better quality gun you're going to get, the company design them to expect you to be a better painter, right? That's not always the case. If you get, I've only ever used Iwater and Lidl's guns, right? But I hear conversations about like the Devil Bliss ones. Yeah, they're good, but you kind of need to be more of a higher end painter to be using them. Whereas some of the Iwater guns, like the guy I bought mine off, start again. He's a rep now, but he was a painter. And he was saying the kit I bought, paint gun, the eye water ones. If you haven't painted for a while, you can always fall back and like you get a good result with them. So I think they're just a bit more forgiving as a paint gun. I don't understand how it works. But what I'm trying to say is, don't buy the top end guns. Your money, buy a decent one. Buy ones with good reviews. And don't buy anything too complex. I know you can get the ones with the inbuilt gauge on it. The first paint job I did was with a 20 quid Lidl's gun. I swear to God, I mean, if I prepped the car right, it would have gone better. But the roof was body shop finish, apart from a massive gouge I did from kin up with 80 for some reason. So you can do a good job with inexpensive gun. For primer, I'd use a separate gun. Definitely run it through a Lidl's 20 quid one if you're at home. For the actual paint itself, maybe spend a bit more money and get an eye water gun. I'm going to put a link to what I'm going to use for mine. Not to say you should use it. I mean, you can get good ones on eBay, but if I link what I've got, it just kind of shows you what I'll be using, what results I get as an inexperienced painter with it when it's done. Boy, I don't think there's much more to talk about paint guns. I think we should talk about pressure, air pressure, inline pressure gauges. You're going to need one. Get one that goes on the end of the gun, like a small one. Your air traps, and let's talk about air traps as well real quick. Guys, I'm sorry. Air traps, right, has a regulator on. An air trap goes right on the end of the compressor, and it traps water and oil trying to go in the lines. Obviously, it's heavier than water, so it'll just sink into a pot instead of going through the airline itself. So you don't get air. You don't get oil. You don't get water and oil in your paint because it's falling into your water trap. And they have a regulator on. First thing I do every time I connect one up, is max out a reg. You max out top air pressure because I want all the control on the gun. I'll have a little dial on it. I'll have a little gauge. Now, obviously, there's different combinations of pressure you can have. I'm not going to tell you what I'll be using because I'm a firm believer in you adapt to the gun. Because I'm not an experienced painter, I'll just adapt to the gun. So if I need to move quicker, I'll move quicker. But I usually put my pressure on high. That's all I'll say. But, before you start painting, definitely do some spray outs on some other metal, like any old door skins and something. Do some spray outs, get comfortable with the gun before you start painting the actual car. Obviously, you're going to have to primer it yourself, and that's enough practice you'll need. When you're primering it, just fiddle around with the gun, fiddle around with the settings and the gauges, and you'll kind of work out how you like it. What kind of pressure you want to set out, whether low or high. If your pressure's low and you're moving slow, you can have a build up, and then you get something called orange peel. That's when the paint looks really crinkly, which is okay if you want like a Raptor effect. But if you want like a mirror gloss paint, it's easier to go for a high pressure and move quick. There's so much that goes into it. I'm probably going to redirect you to a paint gun channel because they'll probably talk about more in depth about pressures and what to look for. So that's our airline, that's our guns, and that's our water traps and regulators talked about. Let's talk about airlines. You can get reinforced airlines, you can get your heavy duty rubber ones, you can get the curly ones. Stay away from all of those. I'll link it again, I bought like a Nielsen one, and it's really nice. It's like good airflow, so 300 psi minimum inside the airline, which is fine. Think of an airline as a reservoir, right? So you got your 100 litre tank, and then you got your airline, and the tank sits at 300 psi, your airline sits at psi. Doesn't matter how big or small the airline is, if it's rated to psi, you'll have a good feed. It's the airline ends that restrict your flow. So if you have a high flow at one end and a low flow at another, and we're talking about the ends that screw onto the airline, it's going to restrict your flow. So stay the same airline end and like a female and male all through the system. Don't switch up for high flow and low flow ends. And the airline, you don't want a crinky one which does the spirals and shit. You don't want like a real heavy duty one that's thick. You want, first of all, you want a new one. Don't use an old one because there might be oil in it, condensation, and this kind of thing. But you want one that's kind of light, manoeuvrable. And obviously it's hard to tell in a picture, so I'm just going to link one I got, and I'm really impressed with it. I don't think I'm going to go for any other airline. The colour of the airline doesn't matter, that's all just aesthetics. It doesn't say like green airline ain't a better flare one than a red one. It doesn't matter. Measure around your car from like one point all the way around, and then make sure you've got more from the compressor to the car. You want to be able to do one full loop with an airline, maybe even two. So make sure you get a long one. Don't get one that's so long you're going to have coils in it like everywhere, you know. And make sure you lay it out before you start. Make sure you lay it out, so like lay it in a straight line, twist all the hoops out so it's like just flat, like, because if it's not, when you move around you've got a coil in the airline, it'll constantly try to pull it and it'll be sticking up, and if you painted like your quarters and your airline coils up and smack the side of it, you're not going to be happy, buddy. So we talked about airlines and airline ends. I think that's about it really. So air pressures, make sure you maxed out your regulator, mate. And then I mean there'll probably be forums that tell you the best air pressures they found for doing different kind of paints and different kind of thicknesses. So I would definitely have a research into that. I can't tell you because I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. So have some research on your own. Cool. I'm going to get a drink of juice real quick because my throat's drying up from all this like running my mouth I've been doing. Right, here's on. Fuck me. Tell you what, I'm not as agile as I never used to be. Switch bit of oil now. I've had some cookies, I've had a coffee and some juice. I'm feeling a lot better. Let's talk about building our own booth, right? How much more is this to do? Let's talk about building a big old booth. Fire under booth. You know, we were talking about our sheeting earlier on when we were talking about masking paper. It's called booth sheeting, right? It's called booth masking, whatever you want to call it. Actually, I don't know why I said that. Here's what it's called, but I'm not sure what it's called, so it's whatever you want to call it. Like I said, it's your choice if you want to listen to me or not. Now, this is from a company called Trident. Those companies do it. I do have a roll of it around here. Comes in a roll like this, and then that folds out 4 times. Folds out a little bit, and then so basically it's 3 of these and a bit long. Well, it's done the whole. It's done the whole line from there down to there, and there's probably still about how much draping on the floor. So we're going to be using that. It's called booth mask. Then I keep saying it's called booth. I don't fucking know. And then to put it up, I mean, it's definitely going to suck to be you if you don't have a wooden roof, but I do, so it doesn't suck to be me. I used a staple gun. And I also ran out of staples, so I used brass tacks, which I hammered into the ceiling. Basically, if you're doing it on your own, because your mate keeps putting you through the gift gas voicemail, fuck you. What I did to do it on my own, I clipped it to the top of the door. So I opened the garage door up, and I clipped the middle with a, just like a normal pinch clip. Put it on the floor. I unfolded it again, put the 2 ends up either side. And when you close the garage door, obviously it drags up to the top. And then from the top, all I did was pushed the sheet up against. At the top of my garage door, I got a wooden beam, so I stapled it to the wooden beam, or if it was you could just staple it to the roof and tape it there. And then slowly I worked my way down the middle. So I went middle, that side and that side, just pushing it up, getting it. Don't go really tight, have it a bit loose. Right, I'll tell you why in a minute. And just work your way from back to the front. The problem is, if you go too tight, so you don't want it too tight. You want it to bag a bit, right? And that is so if it's tight and a gust of wind gets underneath it, it will just rip all the staples out. Well, if it's kind of baggy, it flaps around, but it doesn't tear it. So it's a bit baggy, but every so often I just kept going around it, stapling a bit up. So it's more like a Chesterman sofa on the roof now. It's very, very stylish. And then the sides, you lay the top up, and then you bring the sides to the top, and then you staple along that. So I've stapled them along every now and again. Then the outside of the top drapes back down over that, and that creates a pretty good seal. And then the edges, I'll show you the edges in a minute. But that's both sides done. I left that wall open because I ran out. I didn't run out. I kept some for the car, and now I've done it, I realise I could have done it, but I didn't do it. So try your best to line the whole garage. You'll easily line the garage of this. Okay, you'll line a triple garage with only half a roll. But I was running low, and it was Sunday. So yeah, I've gone around that. And at the bottoms of it, don't know if you can see down like there. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I've just got I ordered some exhaust pipe to do the car, which I'm not using, and I kept it in its cardboard roll and kind of laid it on the ground, rolled the bits up around it, put tape around it, tape it onto the actual sheeting, and that's enough weight to stop it from flapping around in the wind. You want a little bit of play, and you don't want it super tight because you don't want it hanging off the tacks, because it will just rip through the tacks in the ceiling. So basically what I'm trying to say is line the garage. What else have we got in here? So line the garage. Vapour extraction, we said it was different to dust extraction, and it is. Right. Now work with me here, because I haven't built it yet, but I'm going to describe it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a fan here blowing this way. And I've bought some booth filters, which is like a fibre mesh intertwined. It's basically like it's just a big filter, right? And I'm going to tape it to the sucking side of the fan, so it will suck in. And don't underestimate how much a fan can suck. Don't underestimate how anything can suck, actually. So it sucks the vapour, the fumes out this way, through the fan, and in the fan I'm going to build a cardboard cowling, and then the cowling will have the same kind of ventilation tube tumble dryers have, and then that tumble dryer will go out the window, back out, down to outside, and it will sit in a bucket of water. So all the fumes will go through the fan, up the pipe, down, and it will just hit the water, and that'll be it. The good thing about going for a window is you need a little bit of airflow, not a lot, don't go for a lot of airflow, but hopefully with a small window open and I put the hose through it, I won't have a mega amount of air coming in, but I'll have enough to kind of balance out the pressure from inside and outside, if that makes sense. Because where the door's sealed up, well, both doors are sealed up, you know, the walls are sealed, it gets real stuffy, really hot, and you don't want to be stuffy, hot room with paint vapours, because it's just not going to be a very comfortable place to be. So you want the airflow. Alright, obviously space. Let's talk about space, talk about single garages, talk about how I'm blessed with a double. Obviously anything bigger, and you know, don't need to make everyone else feel bad about it. Let's talk about single garages, because double garages, as you can see, is easy. You can walk around the whole car. Single garages is not so easy, especially the single smalls like what the council went out. If you're doing it like that, just do one side at a time. Okay, it's still going to be awkward. I'm not saying it's going to be awkward. You can do it outside in the sun, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But if it's like a bit rainy, just do one side at a time. On minis, it's quite easy because you've got seams to go up against. But what you want to do is you want to pick an area where you want a join line. So if it's a curve back with no join, curve it round and like go up to the light or something. You know, you can always blend paint together, especially if it's in the same pot of paint. It's not too bad. But no, it's definitely a struggle in a single garage. But that's when you might want to think about getting it done at a body shop. You know, double garage again. You don't have to worry if it's sunny and you have the space. Like you're not in a housing estate or anything. You can do it outside. I did my first car outside, and I had a few bugs in it, but not a load really. It was quite good. So I did it outside, and I did it under a tree as well. And I had no leaves in it, if you can believe that. But it dried quick. It was hot. It went on nice. The only bad thing about it was the vapours coming off it. It's not really the best thing for the environment, and I wouldn't do it again. But if you're in that situation, it can be done. I'm not saying it should be. Ask your mate to rent a double garage maybe. Well, ask him if you can use yours. You can get the gazebos outside, you know, a lot of the actual car storage places. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's all about your situation, where you are in the world, you know. I just think right now, I think if you're thinking about painting a car, you already have the space, so it doesn't apply to you. If you don't, I'm sure one of your mates has a car with a double garage and appreciates what's going on. So ask him, and if he tells you no, just tell him like it used to be cool or something like that. Guilt trip him into doing it. And hold on, where am I? And space. Also, I should have talked about this in the beginning, really. And not hygiene, housekeeping, good housekeeping. Keep it clean. In here, I've wet the floors, I've washed the walls, I've put the booth down, but things like masking tape and paper. If you set your booth up, don't drop it on the floor. You can get away with it, but it's not. It's just more about a clean mind. If you have a clean workshop and you have a clean workspace, your work will be clean. I definitely believe. I think the best modification you could do to a car, not just body wise, is just take care of your area where you're working, take care of your tools, and take time out of the day to pack up after yourself, so you're not working in a kind of massive cesspit. Because if you leave anything oily when you're painting, and a gust of wind comes through and blows it all around, you can have a real bad day with silicone and wax in your workshop. So good housekeeping, definitely something to do, especially when you're doing filler as well. If you have filler dust everywhere, you're not going to get a very good visual picture of the filler work you're doing, and the filler work you're doing will look bad just because the area looks bad. You know, your whole car reflects one little bit, and it's all in the details. And I think that's it for the booths, not really much else. Oh yeah, heat. Oh, we talked about heat and temperature and stuff. You can whack some space heaters in here, get a lot of propane space heaters. Don't get the diesel ones that run on, is it diesel? Paraffin. Yeah, diesel. Yeah, we have a diesel one like that. Don't get that. Don't be an idiot. They're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. Because it was all right when you're in there, but the next day your throat will hurt. I don't know how you lot respond to diesel fumes and that, but stay away from the diesel ones. Stay to propane tank ones or electric. So your little electric floor heaters are good, and they do warm the place up, but I don't know how much that will be on your electric bill. I don't know if it's a lot or little. It might just be a couple of quid. If you see a paraffin one second hand, it will heat your workshop super quick. And that's just that really. Heat. Tape garage door up. I've stuffed cardboard under the bottom. Tape the outside, which is good. Don't want no draft under. No leaves flying in. You know, the kind of simple stuff. And I think that's it. I think that's our Tom talk done. I'm really sorry if I wasn't clear about some points. Message me if you want me to spell out to you. If you don't, of course, tell me I've done an excellent job. But you don't have to tell me. I already know this. Yeah, if you need a hand, give us a buzz on Instagram. The name's at red with a capital R _ checked. CHECKED. Let me know if you need a hand. Paint suppliers. Obviously, I'll put everything I use in a description with a little description of what I use. I think I can do that. And yeah, so advanced paints as well. Definitely have a shop round before you start buying equipment, because masking tape and that can get expensive. So have a look around, see what's going on. And yeah, like I said, I'll link everything in the description what I use, things like paint cups and mixing sticks. Even down to staple guns. If I remember, I'll go through all of that. I'm not going to edit this video, I'm just going to jumble it all together. It's too long, I don't care enough. And I send you my best wishes, let me know how it goes. And yeah, don't cut corners, be confident in what you're doing, believe in yourselves. And just because there's specialist places like paint shops to do it doesn't mean you can't do it at home. Don't be discouraged by concourse jobs. Concourse jobs cost a lot of money, and you don't always need them. Just do a good job. And if you do a bad job, then you can always block it down and redo it if you want. If not, at least it's sealed and it won't rust. There's a positive in everything, I suppose. So yeah, I'm glad you could come along and fill my time, because I can't paint my car today because it's raining outside. Cool, yeah. Well, you lot take care of yourselves, I suppose. And if you do paint your car, send me a photo. I want to see. Take care. So to actually talk to you, doing it I can't wear a mask, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go real slow, which is good anyway, just so dust doesn't kick up, and I don't really want dust everywhere on the car. I want to kind of keep it controlled. And then also, like I say, I can't show you what I'm doing for Hoover and my mask is on. So situation is, I'm 500 grit in the roof. I've already blocked down with 320, but I've got a run in the filler primer I've put on because I went through. So I could take it out with, this is 500 Gold Flex, which was what we were talking about in the TED Talk section. So you got your 500 grit there, and then it's spongy on the back, and it's literally just, so when you're going around corners, you can cup it in instead of having like one centre spot on a block. It kind of goes through it a bit faster. I've got a window open for a bit of air air circulation in because it's really hot and stuffy. Perfect for painting. Which is what we'll be doing later, by the way. So here's that America block I was talking about. See what I mean about it being like quite... There's your palm, and it sticks out an extra inch, so you kind of got more control over every edge because you can see. Obviously visually, it's quite important to see what you're doing. And it's got a Velcro back. I mean, this one's pretty bad, I've had this for a while. And these are Abner. Oh, I'd best show you what these are as well. This is a 320 grip Abranet strip. It's got one abrasive side, so I won't rub it too much, and then it's got one soft hook side. Basically, it's Velcro. They just call it soft hook, so Abranet soft hook pads, strips, and it just goes onto the Velcro on the back of a pad. Line up real nice. It's a bit sponged, it's like sponged a little bit. And there we go, that's done. You've got a Hoover take off on the back, and you have a, it's like I'll show you that little kind of nerd part there, curl part there. You twist to get airflow, and that's just a Hoover adapter, but it doesn't fit my Hoover. The neighbour's outside, so we gotta be really quiet because I don't want her to think we're a loser. The run's there, so all we're going to do is really gently. There's also a running that guy down there, so you can't get to it. God, that wind's really picking up. We can't get to it with that. So we're going to take it off. Turn the Hoover on, so mind your ears. And that was that. So that's done. So I've just 320'd really gently. 320 runs out. And now what I do is I grab my 500, that's a bit dirty. Grab my 500 soft pad. And there we go. While I'm on the subject of talking, guys, we're going to talk about rubbing 320 down with 500. Now you can hear it. Okay, I'll be quiet. Hear it how it's really gritty. And over if I wipe it off. And on the bit I've just done, can you hear it? Hold on. Hear how it sounds a lot smoother. That means it's done and dusted. That's all you need to do. So I do one pass up, another pass down, and one through the middle, just in case passes I've got a gap in the middle. So, and that's that. And it took me about not even 5 minutes to do 1/3 of this roof, so it doesn't take very long going around it. What will take long is the panels for the body. They're going to take a while. I've actually ordered some 180 discs for my Orby sander to go over them, to get that. God, I wish I'd never opened that window now. I've ordered some 180 discs to go on the Orbi sander to get that photo etch back, not the bare metal but scrubber back. With photo etch, all you need is red Scotch Brite in a pad, and you need a solvent degreaser, and then you just rub it back, and when it's matte it's ready. So that's what you need to do with that. I'm only using the Orbi sander on the door skins just because I can, and I need to do a little filler work on the boot, and for some reason I ordered 180. Now I'm just making excuses to justify my spending habits of ordering sandpaper. So I've seen a little bit when the roof's done, and then we're gonna oh yeah, I've only put a little bit of sealer in that corner because there was like a tiny hole in the corner of the roof. I think I must have burnt through it with a wire wheel. Again, be careful with wire wheels, they are abrasive. So I've only done a little bit there. I could have gone around the whole roof, but I thought that was a bit of overkill, and I'd rather see the rust coming through than have it underneath, have like sealer on top of it, because sealer works both ways. It keeps out and also keeps in, so you've got to be a bit careful. But what we're going to do is we're going to finish rubbing this down, and then I'm going to mask the roof up very carefully, around only one strip, not the whole thing. And with a paintbrush, I'll show you how to mix the paint up. I'll do a little bit of paint mixing, and with a brush go around the edges, because the angle it is, if you have a look, it's going to be really hard to get paint under that gutter lip. So don't try, because with the primer I was like just trying to get it in like that, and all I managed to do was have a massive run right across, which took me a while to block out without having to block out that and put more primer on. Right, so here we go. So today I'm going to paint the roof. This is what I'm going to do, the plan of attack. Follow along with me. So the roof's in high build primer. I've blocked it with some guide coats and 320 on a block. The bits I've gone through, which are yellow now, I've gone through with a rattle can filler primer, and I'll just touch them in. Now I'm doing the 500 stage, so I'm going around it at 500 Gold Flex, and that will take the scratches and the roughness out of a high build block down by 320, and also it'll knock the high build in the can down, because obviously it has to be sprayed after I block my car. Paint wise, if you get any tight corners like this, like the gutter, especially around in the corners, you won't get it with a paint gun. Now I'm going to have to do some research, but it's some fancy Greek name, some philosopher, I don't fucking know. But you spray in, and the actual wind pressure takes the paint right back out, and it just won't spray down that channel. So what I'm going to do is, I've sealed a little bit on the corner. I'm going to go round, mix some paint up with a brush, go down the edges of a brush, masking the body, being very careful, and then once it's done, I can spray the roof and not have to worry too much about the gutters, because they're already done. I think that's it really. I've got a little bit more to do in the middle. You can see the kind of colour change there, smooth, coarse, so you can see what you're doing, you can see where you're going. So as soon as I've done this, I'm going to degreaser it 5 times, especially get down in the gutters, make sure it's all dry, and then I'm going to hit over it with a paintbrush. And when the paintbrush is drying, we'll mix some paint up, ready for a gun, get it all ready in here, mask the body up, and then hopefully at the end of the day the roof will be white, and then we can carry along our merry days. Sorry about the noise, I've got a window open back there to get some wind flow in there. Cool, so I'll see you there. Right guys, so I'm going to show you how to rip this. It's hard to get all of it in picture, but we're using a large cardboard roll. You want to get this stuff because you recycle it. Don't just buy the plastic sheet, because that's a one-time use plastic. It's not very good for the environment. So to rip this, you can use like a bag cutter or a Stanley blade, but sometimes there's an easier way. Right, so you grab the bit that's about to tear off, and then you just pull upwards, and then it rips it out for you. If you try to rip it like conventional paper, like this, and you rip it down, it will just like go off at an angle, because because you're pulling apart and it'll just like whoosh, down, or whoop, down. So if you just pull it up, directly up, don't pull up and around, don't pull up and out, because it will just start tearing around the roll. Drag directly up. Max wants to know what the meaning of life is, the fulfillment of life, and in the words of Mike Skinner himself, every time you find the meaning of life, they change it. I think that was the only question I got. Maybe I'm so good I've answered your questions before you even asked them. Obviously watch to the end of the video, because I'm sure I'll drop some more bits and pieces throughout. Right now I'm just taping up. Right, let's talk about taping masking, alright? Now, masking can be a pain in the arse. As you can see, it's not very neat, but it is what it is. Now, when you're masking cardboard, the paper up, lay it, grab your two ends, lay it up against the panel, and then gently, because it should be long enough, get the long ones, just kneel your foot, kneel your knee against the base of it, and then grab your tape, roll it up with your hand to where you want it, tape it, and then put it on. It's not hard, but don't try to tape it on the floor, because it means you're laying the masking flat on the floor to tape, and that's not very good because you get stuff on it. And again with tape, make sure it's all pressed down nice and tight. You'll be surprised where overspray gets to. I'll show you something real quick. Obviously this doesn't apply to what you guys are doing. This applies more to colour matching, right? Ooh, a bit nippy in it. Soft edges, they're called. When you're masking up a car, let's say you're blending a colour across, right? So half the wing's painted, you've repaired a little bit in the paint coat. You got the paint coat fine, right? You're just matching it. They call it soft edging, right? With tape. So you want a little bit of overspray so it blends itself out. That's our flat bit of tape and that's our hard line, right? Now what we do at work is they fold that hard line over onto itself so it looks like that. And when you stick it down, see where it doesn't stick, it flaps up a little bit. When you paint a car, that edge will have overspray in it, and then you'll be able to polish that back into the paint. It blends quite nicely. Another thing we'll talk about when we're painting cars is fade out thinners, which I should have probably touched up on in the big talk video. But fade out thinners, it's just thinners in a can, right? You can use it in a gun if you don't want to buy a can. I'll explain what we use them first actually. So when I do this car, I'm going to start in the middle, start there. I'm going to go around, spray all the apertures and the quarters and all that, keep going, just working my way around, don't go back on yourselves, keep going. Because every time you spray, it's putting overspray somewhere. So if I spray this line here and I spray this line here, in the middle you'll have overspray, just follow it through, right round, right round, right round. And I'll join it back up in the middle. Now I'm joining it back up there because the scuttle is a flat panel. So it's going to be easy to block, easy to wet dry, easy to polish. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. I'll do it between the holes, evenly between the holes, so the polisher mitt doesn't catch on them holes and rip itself up. And obviously it'll join it up there. Fade out thinners is usually used when you've got paint already on the car that's gone hard, and then you're painting up to it. And you paint up to that. So let's say this part's painted and this part isn't. So I spray this, and I get overspray on the part that has already been painted. You use fade out thinners and you spray it over the line where the join is, and then that will thin the paint out kind of watery, and it will kind of just, I don't know what the word is, but it kind of gives it a more subtle, smoother finish out, so it will be harder to see. So what I'm going to do is join it up here, spray it down, so the overspray dust that is on that join, the dust will kind of go like more paint type. Because obviously dust is dry. When you paint, bits around your spray will dry, and that's what the overspray is. So what we'll be doing is we'll be thinning it out. So rehydrates it, if that's a word for it, rehydrates the overspray dust, turns it into paint again, so it kind of sinks in. It's nice. Obviously you won't get rid of it completely, but it's going to be a lot more subtle line for you to work with, and struggling like buggery to polish it out. So that's the plan. If I was painting panel at a time, which you might need to do if you're in a single garage, I think I touched up on this already, but with minis they've got seams. Okay, so I would put some tape on one side, spray up to it, when it dried, put tape on the other side, and after the car's done, I would just go down with a brush and make sure I touch in everything I haven't got with a paint gun. Sometimes spraying panel by panel is a lot easier than doing the whole car, especially if you'd have to do it if you haven't got a man enough compressor, space, and time. Like if you're just doing it in an evening, yeah, it was all right doing the whole car, but sometimes you might only have like half an hour, so one panel, maybe. Don't know if that makes sense. You might as well just do your car. I don't know. But if there's any time you need to spray panel by panel, don't worry about it. Just mask, hard line somewhere, mask it up, or what we did with that flip tape to do that panel. When you come around to it the next day, take the masking off, switch it around so your soft lines on the bit you've painted, paint back, whoosh, fray down thinners, and then it should join up okay. On a classic Mini and smaller cars like this, if you haven't got a man enough compressor, don't worry too much, because there's not much on this car to actually paint. With a roof, if you're doing the roof the same colour, or if you've only got like a 25 litre compressor and you're doing the roof, this is the only panel you're going to struggle with, because it's the largest and it's the only one you've got to hold your paint gun down for long durations, whereas with a quarter you just smack it on there, and you're not holding it down for long enough. So while the compressor's running, your pressure's building back up, it doesn't matter. Don't spray the panels on the car. Obviously you might think, oh yeah, the back's a big panel, but it's not. When the boot's gone, it's not. I don't think there's any car that actually a big back panel. They're always small. Never spray the panel at the same time if you can. It's better to take it off and do it separately so you can get all the edges and that. Because if you don't get the edges, you get like a real rough line. So if I was spraying a door, a bit of paint wouldn't get to it, would build up. It'd be a real rough line. You can't really block it out. And that's that really. That's it for that little TED talk. Bloody hell, it's going to be a long video. Right guys, let's mix some paint up. So I got my painting cup here. This is a clean one. It's got some just dust on while I was just holding it. So it's a 2-to-1 paint mix. Can't really see it very well, but this is a 2-to-1 scale. So I'm only going to measure it on the lowest one, because all I'm doing is using a brush to brush it around the gutters, so I don't need a lot. This is the paint I'll be using. It is Klosterman coatings. I bought this from Advanced Paints. It's next day delivery, really good service. I was really impressed. So what I'm going to do real quick is just shake the tin up. I'll do for that. And let's crack the lid off it. Maybe not the correct tool to use, but it is a tool nonetheless. There we go. And I'm just going to grab a paint mixing stick out. And I'm going to stir this up for a little bit. Because while I shook it, I got some air bubbles in, so if I just stir it, get it all. Oh yeah, this is the colour it is. I don't know where you can see that. so I'm looking at, where's the 2 to 1 scale? There it is. So we're looking at this scale down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up to 2. It's easier if you had like a funnel, I do not. Right, let's fill up to 2. Could have gone a lot better really. A lot better. That's the problem with fresh tins, where it's so full, it reaches the edge before it actually starts tipping. But I'll tell you what, for a fluke dunk, if you want to call it that didn't go too badly actually. Just mess up. Remember, just be clean, tidy after yourself. As I literally just touched the wet paint now. Just grab a bit of this cloth. Try a bit. Just go around the lid. There we go. Right, let's bring that lid back on. I know what you said in our talks about double gloving, which I'm not doing at the moment, just because of the lack of gloves in the UK at the moment. Single glove's fine. I mean, you know. But there we go. That's on our 2 mark, on our first red mark for the 2 to 1 mix. Now let's just crack. This is called hardener, right? And this is fat. Oh god, I'm getting white paint everywhere. Bloody hell. Let's take a glove off. Let's take a glove off, and we'll use this hand for working with the tins to make sure they stay nice. Right. So this is called Sprint Line. It's a 2K HS fast hardener, it says on the tin. Most hardeners are the same. Although our Closterman's coating, they actually have a primer hardener. I'm not sure what the actual difference is. But if they sell primer hardener and they sell primer, it's probably best get the primer hardener. These are a pull out lid like this. Now, hardening is really sticky if you get it on your hands, so try your best not to. You know, just try your best to, go on, slowly let that pressure release. There we go. Pull that casing out. Make sure you're holding the pot down. The amount of times I've done that, I've just got all over me. So. But now we're filling a hardener up to the scale of 1. That's at 1. Oh yeah, also, where the paint sits in the pot, the edges kind of go up a little bit. So if it's just over 1, you can see it on the inside, it's actually under. But that's what that's about. So it's not my competence to pour paint, although I am quite. What I'll do is after I've done this, I'll tidy them tins up. Now it's time for the thinners, right? Now this can be a messy job, where the tin's full. I want to wipe this white. Oh, I'll do it later. I'll have a proper clean up with some thinners later. So you've got to be a bit steady, and where you tip the thinners, where it's one of your jugs, it kind of hits the top of the jug before it actually gets into the pot. So always tip it with the nozzle facing up, so you get air, so the air gets out. And all I'm going to do is fill a lid up because you don't need very much. And really, I don't really need to finish this full stop because I'm using a brush. I didn't really think about it when I was doing it, but there you go, at least you know how to mix paint. And then I'm just going to grab my stirring stick. You can usually feel the consistency change. Yeah, it's really thin, or maybe I should have left it a bit thicker. We'll try it, and if it's not going to plan, I'll add a little bit more paint to it to thicken it up. And then what I've done, I've left the brush I'm using sitting in finish for a quick second. And I did that just to make sure there wasn't no grease in it. Where it's been sat in the tub, you don't know where it's been in the factory or whatever. So I just had it sat, and now I'm just going to push it against a cotton cloth to get the most of the finish out.
thinners should evaporate on their own quite quick. Yeah, well, I'm fully committed pushing it against my hand. Right, here we go. Now let's go back to the car.